It's a program that enables teachers to travel abroad to learn firsthand about things that many have only read about. Classrooms Without Borders travels regularly to Israel, Germany, Poland, and more. And with every trip, Dr. Gur hopes the program is opening minds and hearts.
I was born in Israel, in Haifa. My parents were Holocaust survivors. My mom lost everybody, her parents, her brothers, sisters. She had one brother in Israel who she found after the war. And my father lost everybody. He didn't have anyone in his family that survived.
And yet, Dr. Zipora Gur, or Tsipy as she's known, never knew about the Holocaust while growing up in Israel. Tsipy and her brother Moshe were first-generation Israelis. They had a wonderful childhood, but their parents rarely spoke about the past.
So they kind of raised us very sheltered. I didn't hear the terrible stories. I didn't know what happened to everybody. I thought it was normal for my grandparents not to survive. Everybody in my neighborhood, everybody in my school had parents but did not have grandparents. So I remember that to see an old man was really something special. But I really thought that they were old and they died. We never really asked the questions.
But these days, Tsipy spends most of her time answering questions and helping to create a unique understanding about the Holocaust and more. She is the founder and executive director of Classrooms Without Borders. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to the professional development of teachers by creating study seminars abroad. This group of teachers, a mix from public, private, and charter schools, will travel to Poland this summer. Tsipy's been involved in teacher education programs for years.
It just didn't make sense. How can you teach about something and not be there? So we started supporting first the Jewish teachers to Israel. And I thought, I really need to support teachers to go to Poland with Holocaust survivors and really explain what Holocaust is and genocide. So we started supporting teachers that are not Jewish, social study teachers and literature teachers and teachers from the art.
And they enter here and they see these showers.
WQED accompanied Tsipy and a group of local teachers on a journey to Poland back in 2005. On this trip, Holocaust survivor Cantor Moshe Taube was among those to share his story.
And this is where my mother and my sister are.
Everything about the trip is thoughtful, emotional, heartfelt, and you could say the same for its organizer, who traveled her own unique journey to bring others here. And do you remember then when you began to learn and when you began to realize what the Holocaust was and what it was all about?
When Eichmann was caught in '61.
Adolf Eichmann was a Nazi criminal who escaped after the war. Israeli security forces eventually captured him in Argentina more than a decade and a half later. His trial and subsequent hanging would change Tsipy's life.
I remember people fainting. The testimonies were terrible. My family had television, but they didn't want to see it. I was 17, my last year of high school, and this was the beginning for me.
Tsipy's father never shared his story and would not return to Poland, but her mother decided to take her there for a visit. Tsipy would eventually learn how amid the chaos, a righteous Polish Gentile helped to save her mom.
My mom was in the ghetto. He was very courageous. He basically took Jews from the ghetto and brought them to the partisans in the woods. I just couldn't believe that my mom lived for 3 years in swamps. Like, I really couldn't understand it.
But Tsipy understood she wanted to make her parents proud. She studied Hebrew, literature, and sociology while getting a degree in education. And she achieved the rank of lieutenant during her mandatory service in the Israeli army. Tsipy later married and moved to Pittsburgh with her husband, where her focus on education continued.
I came here in 1974. I followed my husband, who came to do a PhD in health physics. So just followed him, and then I did a PhD too.
all while raising 2 young boys. Zippy worked as a teacher and principal for many years, first taking students on trips abroad. Later, as the educational director of the Agency for Jewish Learning, she began to focus on teachers, work that continues today in Classrooms Without Borders.
You can teach about the Holocaust, but when you're there with a survivor in Auschwitz, hearing first source, how he survived, what happened at that place, what happened at that moment, those are things that you'll never forget.
And they're the lessons these teachers want to experience.
There's a difference between hearing a story, reading a story, and stepping foot into it.
You're exposed to different, more individualistic history of the Holocaust and of Jewish history in general.
I'm the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. Being in the cities that my grandparents and my family was in, seeing the camps firsthand, that kind of experience is immeasurable, and you can't really get that from a book.
I really want a sense of, like, what did it take to survive something like this?
And it takes a lot to make these trips happen. Fundraising, organizing, researching, outreach. Zippy does it all on a volunteer basis. Avi Ben-Hur is the program's director of education.
In Israel, we have a term which I think aptly describes Tsipy in a very positive way. She's a bulldozer. She gets things done. She wants to create the best, most enriching educational experience possible for teachers to make them better teachers.
All while promoting tolerance and understanding.
You know, it's funny because a few years ago I met a guy that his father was a Nazi. It was the first time for me, and it was very powerful, you know, his story and what happened to him, you know, because he discovered that his father killed a lot of Jews. And I called my mother and I said, so what would you say if I tell you that I'm having lunch with somebody that his father was a Nazi? And she said, it's not his fault, you know? So I think I am the person that I am a lot because my parents gave me the strength, you know, and to do what I believe is right and to stand up for the right things.
Zippy hopes she's passing down that strength to her children and grandchildren, and also sharing it with the teachers she meets. For this little girl, who was once sheltered from history, is now doing her part to keep it alive.
She's a whirlwind. She is extremely passionate about what she does.
She brings so much to just this community as a whole.
I know that I'm going to make a difference with this somehow.
When you take teachers, they teach differently. They come back, they change curriculum. They can really change the world if you let them. So every day, I just love what I do and I pray that I can keep doing it.